Hi everyone, what's up and welcome back to episode 6 of Storytime in the Bakery. So I ended the last episode saying, not too much really happened over the next few years. And so I was going to dive right into the Crumb Boss era. But as I really got to thinking about the next few years from, I think it was around 2007 where I ended off, when we were just starting to get our foothold after 2 years of nonstop chaos, through to around 2011 when I met Stephanie and we started the Crumb Boss channel. There definitely were a lot more stories and small fires and just general discomfort for me in that bakery. And I mentioned in the last one about not being able to display my creative talents in my own bakery because of pushback and basically just disinterest from the customers early on. So all of these experiences that I've been talking about up until now began forming my reality of what it was like owning this bakery. My lifelong childhood dream of owning my own bakery was being replaced with what I considered a nightmare. If I can be very honest, I did not love it. In fact, I was starting to hate it. So what my accountant warned me about before buying this bakery had actually become the truth. I bought myself a job where my passion for baking was fading fast because I was just busier fixing toilets and ovens and mixers and motors and employee relations than I was actually baking. I was being run ragged by everything there is when it comes to running a business, meaning I was wearing all the hats to fall into place where someone didn't show up, or even worse, where we eventually couldn't even afford to staff people. Because once 2008 rolled around, well, if any of you remember where you were during that big mortgage scam and what Wikipedia, actually this is the definition from Wikipedia, about the most severe worldwide economic crisis since the Great Depression, where predatory lending in the form of subprime mortgages targeted low-income home buyers, excessive risk-taking by global financial institutions, a continuous buildup of toxic assets with banks, and then the bursting of the U.S. housing bubble culminated in a perfect storm which led to the Great Recession. And guess what? I had just bought my first house 2 years earlier based on that definition I just read to you. Now, I know in one of my previous episodes, I said that as I tell my stories and experiences, I in no way want to ever come across as a victim to any of it. I always believe that everything is perfect all the time, even when your face is down in the dirt. But damn, can I catch a break? So the trickle-down effect was definitely trickling down into my bakery by this time, but it was a slow trickle. So for me, the effects of 2008 had not fully taken effect until probably closer to like late 2009, maybe even into 2010. And this came in the way of just masses of people eventually not buying luxury items the way that they had been in more financially lucrative times. So naturally, things like cakes and daily pastries are going to decline. But of course, the monthly rent still increased every year, the utilities increased, the cost of ingredients also went up, and I'll never forget, the hardest part to take was actually watching the freight charges on my weekly deliveries because the cost of gasoline was also sky high. So, but I think by 2009, I was finally getting $1 for a crumb bun though, so at least there was that. Ugh. Don't forget, Dunkin' Donuts stole my donut business the year before, and now Starbucks was going into the same strip mall that my bakery was in. I mean, talk about trying to keep your head above water with all of this playing against you. And at the same time, I was upside down in my new mortgage, meaning that I paid way more for it than it was worth because I was sort of, I don't know, how do you say this without sounding victimized, but I knew nothing about buying a house. Similarly to not knowing anything about buying a bakery, I guess, right? So I relied on my realtor, who, as it turned out, was also the realtor for the seller of my house. Yeah, talk about playing both sides. So she then appointed her friend, who was a mortgage broker, who basically just waited too late to lock in my no documentation mortgage, which basically meant I was a very high risk. I mean, they were giving mortgages to anyone at that time, and the penalty for that was a really super high mortgage rate. So basically her waiting, for whatever reason she waited, I don't know, maybe it benefited her in some way, but that locked me into an even higher rate. So I basically had 2 mortgages and HOA fees on this little house that I bought that basically cost me about $2,400 a month to live there for a mortgage. That was just the mortgage and the HOAs. Now, don't get me wrong, I absolutely loved my house, but it was nothing more than what we here in the US call a double wide trailer. So when the bakery business started taking a hit, so did my paycheck. My partner Drew and I actually couldn't even take a paycheck for a couple of months because that's how bad it got. Needless to say, I was getting behind on my mortgage, and eventually it got so bad that I was foreclosing on my house. So I'm still really sad about that, and a close friend told me that I probably still have not properly grieved that loss. But why am I talking about all of that here? I mean, isn't this bakery story time not how Gretchen's life started to fall apart story time? But technically, it's one and the same. And the reason I felt like it's kind of appropriate to add into my bakery story time is because every single one of my experiences relates to everything, really, and how one thing leads to another kind of a thing. So basically, the feelings that I had for my bakery up until now were just not great. And now, because I bought myself the hardest job I'd ever worked in my life, and mind you, I'd been waitressing at a New Jersey diner since I was 14 years old, with lines out the door on a Sunday morning. Here I was stacking plates up my little teenage arm up to my shoulders for 10 grueling hours a day. And this bakery was the hardest physical job I've ever had. So by this point, it was all kind of accumulating into one huge pile of regret and sadness. And all of this while at the same time, my biological clock is ticking. Insert Marissa Tomei from My Cousin Vinny, best movie ever, because I was now almost 36 years old. And although I didn't want to admit it to anyone, what I wanted more than anything, even a bakery, was a husband. How the hell do you get a husband when all you do is work 18 hours a day and eat cheesecakes and Danishes from morning till night? Yeah, I was getting pretty fat too. So you see, although I ended the last episode saying, yeah, not much was happening, so much was happening. It was the beginning of my literal breakdown, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And while it wasn't the bakery's fault per se, I blamed it on the bakery and anyone associated with it. Looking back on it, I do have a lot of regrets, more about who I was being, though, based on all of this. And I can say now, oh, I'm not trying to play the victim. I believe everything happens for a reason. Believe me, back then, I was not on that page. I was like, why me? I hate my life. This sucks. It's everyone's fault. On top of culminating a pretty fear-based response to everything. So I was just always afraid, always angry that everything was going to break at every turn. I was always afraid we wouldn't have enough and that we were going to lose everything. So, you know, whenever you have fear at that level, like the control aspect starts to get really intense because you're just trying to control every little thing to avoid your greatest fears coming true, right? So looking back on that, I feel really bad for the people around me. Like, that's a really hard personality to work with. One example of this, and I think about it even to this day, is that around the same time during the winter, this little old lady in her long coat and high-heeled snow boots came through the door, and she tripped and fell. It was minutes before closing, and I'll never forget, there was this one kid, he was working for me. The heck was his name? Damien? No, it was Dorian. And so I was in the back, like setting up all the pastries and danishes and all the doughs and stuff for the next day. And he was in the back washing the coffee pots. And so we heard the bell on the door. We had a bell on the door, and that would alert us if a customer came in. And so he came running back up just to find this little old lady on the floor. And he yelled, "Oh no, she needs life alert." So I mean, it was funny, but it wasn't funny. So we ran over to help her, and then like we brought her into the back. She walked into the back, and we sat her down at my desk and assessed the situation. And eventually she said she was fine. And after like maybe a half an hour of her gathering herself, she left. And then a week later, we were hit with a lawsuit. She said there was snow all around the front door that was not shoveled, and she slipped and fell on that and broke her shoulder. Now, I have to insert here a picture of the strip mall that my bakery was in, because there was about an 8-foot awning over the entire sidewalk that went around the whole strip mall. Like from the parking lot to the door of every single store, there was a giant 8-foot, maybe 10-foot awning. So unless we had a blizzard of the century that would shut down the entire state, there was no way any snow would have accumulated at the door. But at any rate, my insurance adjuster came, assessed the situation, and even with camera footage showing that there was no snow in the doorway or on my bakery floor, she got the settlement. Now, mind you, Chatham, New Jersey is one of the richest towns in the state. And don't forget, this lady with her fur-lined high-heel snow boots come walking in. But I mean, you know, that's what business insurance is for, but damn, just keep piling it on. So the whole reason that I'm explaining that incident was because all of these things just kept adding to my fear of everything. And through that experience, I now got familiar with insurance policies and what's covered and what is not. And so what I'm trying to say, my regret that I have even up until today, is that several months later, another woman customer who she'd come in a couple of times, so I was a little bit familiar with her, very nice. She asked to use the bathroom. Now, we didn't have tables in my bakery, so we didn't have a public restroom, and we weren't obligated to have one. But she was having women's issues, if you know what I mean. And I was just in so much fear at that time about everything. And anyone walking into that kitchen that was not an employee, like, all I saw was my liabilities at every angle. I mean, we had hot racks and ovens and mixers and places to trip and burn yourself and knives and you name it, like a literal obstacle course of destruction to get to the bathroom all the way at the end of my bakery. At least that's how I saw it. Like it was like moats filled with alligators that you had to jump over. Like that's, you know, seriously, when you're that wrapped up with fear, it's really an MNFer. Like you just start to like have these catastrophe scenarios. So I was just really scared of another lawsuit, and I told her that she couldn't use the restroom. Now that was almost 15 years ago, and it still haunts me to this day. Like I really feel bad about that I turned her away. Like how crappy my tremendous amount of fear about everything like didn't let my humanity come first. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I still think about that to this day. Like I would definitely do things differently now, but again, it took all of these experiences to actually get me to where I am today. And I've owned so much of my anger and victimhood and fear. And I've worked through so much at this point that I can say I'm definitely a better person today. But, you know, I don't know. I guess that's how you get there, right? It's all a journey. So it wasn't until around 2015, though, and that was right around the time that I sold the bakery, where I first got my glimpses of just how badly I was in victim and fear mode. But we'll get to there and to all of that story, because right now we're still just about 2010. Unless, of course, you guys are all bored to tears about my personal experiences being peppered into this bakery story, let me know in the comments, because my intention for this series is actually to keep it going well after I sold the bakery and all the way through my time with Jason in the Woodland Bakery blog and that new YouTube channel, along with the second and third lawsuits that came shortly after that, and then the shutdown of that business and into Gretchen's Bakery. And then that whole thing fell apart to some very interesting third-party hands that's worth mentioning. And then ultimately my restart as Gretchen's Vegan Bakery in 2016, which is still where I am today. But first, I have a whole decade to get through, and why I think starting with the Crumb Boss era at this point is a good place to pick it up. But I felt like everything that I've said so far, like to give you an idea of where my mind was, and that, you know, just where I was, like essentially at the end of everything with this bakery and where my life had gone, like what I thought it would look like in my late 20s and early 30s, and what it actually looked like as I was in my mid 30s now, approaching 40 very quickly, were very different scenarios. So it's now close to 2010, 5 years into my ownership, and my business is still holding on despite the greatest recession in our lifetime since the Great Depression. But now we're operating with a skeleton staff. Like this recession, although it was starting to level off, since, you know, we were all accepting the new normal that they feed us, like really there's nothing new under the sun. Every 20 or so years we go through something like this, don't you think? Getting used to higher prices and lower salaries and life inside of this economic system just harder to navigate, especially as a single person. But the good thing, and seemingly only thing I could actually control, was that I decided to take control of my diet and replaced whole cheesecakes with protein shakes and salads. And I joined a gym. And it was here at the gym that I met Stephanie in the spring of 2010.
I don't see nothing.
Back?
Yeah.
Back? I hit that too, alright?
This is what she does when she is not making cupcakes or anything, crumb buns or anything.
So I joined this boxing gym, and the workout was really great. It was intense and fun, and I would go twice a week after I closed the bakery on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And basically it was an open class, and you would just sort of grab a partner depending on who was there, and that would be your boxing buddy for the night. I would always see Stephanie there, and because I didn't know anyone there, I was always just kind of a loner. Like I'm not like that one in a social situation that would just go and start talking to strangers. Like I don't do that. So I would just sort of wait to get picked last, like the kid in dodgeball. But Stephanie seemed to know everyone. Like she was always just bouncing around, acting crazy, but in a fun way. And, you know, I was just really trying not to be seen too much. Just blend in was my motto. So I definitely tried to avoid her extroverted energy. But eventually we got paired up together. And we really did end up hitting it off. And so, you know, she asked me a lot of questions during the class. We would be talking. And I remember telling her that I owned a bakery in Chatham. So she asked me what was the specialty that we sold there. And I said crumb buns. So she goes in her Jersey accent, "Oh, so who are you, the crumb boss?" Now, mind you, the cake boss was taking off at that time in mid-2010, and he also was from New Jersey. So it was just pretty fun funny. I was like, yep, you could definitely say I'm the boss of a big pile of crumbs. That is my life right now. So we became fast friends, and boxing was our outlet. And so Stephanie had a pretty intense job too, and she was also single, so we ended up having a lot in common. And even though I was always more introverted in social situations, when I was with her, I did feel more at ease, and her high-strung energy was definitely contagious. And she, like me, had a really big imagination. And I swear, we just felt like little kids playing together every time we got together. One of the first things we did as our friendship developed was we applied to go on the Amazing Race show, if anybody knows what I'm talking about. I mean, after all, my life up until that time felt like a pretty amazing race, so why not? I could face any challenge there was. So obviously we didn't get picked for that, but her next idea was to come into my bakery and film for the still very new YouTube platform. Even in 2010, it was nothing compared to what it is today. So I'm not sure that she had a real plan. If she did, she didn't let me know what that was. But basically she was just like, let's film videos in your bakery. I was like, nope, not interested. I do not want to be on camera, so no. But she came in anyway on a Saturday, and this was our very first video.
Where's the crumb boss? Oh, there she is. She's climbing up her shelf. This is inside Woodland Bakery live. We're making blueberry pie.
No, we're making blueberry cheese.
Oh, okay. Blueberry cheesecakes. Oh, there she is.
Isn't it really like everything you ever imagined it would be inside the magical Crumb Boss factory?
Yeah, tell us what that's an apple one.
No, that's a pineapple one.
Okay. Ooh, look at all those cherries.
Strawberry.
Okay. Everything. I get every. Okay. I have to go now because I have to make boxes.
Yes.
That's my job.
Did you notice the buckets that I'm scooping out of? The buckets of goop. I mentioned that in the last episode. Now, my second passion after baking is actually talking about baking and teaching baking. So here is my second video that we ever filmed.
Ready?
All right, so Crumb Boss, what are we doing now?
Right now we're going to teach how to, this is Chelsea and Kristen. They want to learn how to cover a cake with fondant. So right now I'm kneading the fondant. We colored it light green because we're going to make a, oh hello, oh hello.
I'm down here.
I'm down here. So, okay, so we're going to just, you got to knead it so that it's all real smooth. The cakes that we're covering are fairly small. So, just want to start with this.
And I think it was at this point that I started to see a light at the end of my dark and broken down, almost bankrupt tunnel that I was in. It was with the Crumb Boss videos that I could actually start to teach and relive my passion again. Sure, I was fixing toilets and getting sued by my customers by the day, but by night, I could be the Crumb Boss and connect with an audience that loved baking just as much as I did. I could show them real pastry cream and lemon curd and all the techniques of pastry that I loved so much, pâte à choux for perfect eclairs and cream puffs, mixing techniques and all the bakery tips and tricks, and loads of laughs along the way. Oh my God, we had so much fun, and I was starting to get my happiness back. I'll never forget when we reached 90,000 subscribers. It was right after I taught the world how to make Swiss meringue buttercream. That video is what put us on the map, and then we started to realize that we could eventually make some money doing this. Our first YouTube check for $100 came in, like, I don't know, a few months after that we started, and it was really then that I realized that, hey, wait a minute, this could be a business, but not only a business, this could be what gets me out of my bakery eventually. I'd always known that I didn't want to grow old in that bakery. Number one, it would be impossible to keep up with that level of physical labor as I got older, not to mention, I just didn't love it. But Crumb Boss videos, I absolutely loved it. So every Saturday after I worked a 10-hour shift, Steph would show up, and in between my bakery tasks that day, though, I would also be prepping for the Crumb Boss videos so that we could start filming as soon as she got there at like 5 o'clock. So we would usually film until like 9 o'clock at night, and we would upload those videos straight to my bakery computer, like straight up to YouTube. No editing, just raw, straight up reality for the limit of 10 minutes on each video. At that time, YouTube had a 10-minute time limit per video, which was why I was always racing through the videos. Like when I look back on the cakes and the desserts that I was putting out, I'm like, oh my God, this is horrifying. Some of that stuff looked like I made it with a blindfold on. It was so hideous, but everybody loved it. Like, I was trying to teach while talking to Steph. She'd ask the most absurd questions while I'm trying to make whatever from scratch in less than 10 minutes and engage the camera. Like, it was total chaos, but finally chaos in a good way. So we uploaded every single weekend for 8 months straight, hundreds of videos, and did not miss one single weekend. It was fantastic. I loved it. And this is what gave me my spark back. I then started incorporating Crumb Boss everything into my bakery, and people from all over would come visit me. I had t-shirts made and started selling cake kits, and started a website, the crumbboss.com website, so that I could start actually sharing these recipes in written printable form. It's just so amazing when I think back to the beginning of all of this. YouTube was so new. Websites and blogging was new. Well, at least to me. Like a whole new world of business was emerging. And it was not that long ago. Like, I look at how far it's all come, like looking back on it now, it was a total whirlwind of how quickly it took off. And both Stephanie and I were not computer savvy people, especially when it came to understanding the website part of it and the e-commerce part of it. And, what it took to run that part of it on top of cranking out now close to 10 videos every Saturday. Imagine the amount of prep work I was piling on to my already full Saturdays at the bakery, and then packing up cake kits at night, and like the inventory of t-shirts that was in my living room at that time. It was just like, it was unbelievable. So, although it was fun, it was getting exhausting with no break for 8 straight months, including going all the way through Christmas. So it was like, essentially, I was running 2 businesses all at the same time. And I closed the bakery every New Year that we all could get a much needed break. And it was then that Stephanie and I took a vacation to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. And we had just the best time. Like, we were so excited because we were launching this new business. Like, everything seemed possible. And it's sort of like here that I guess we wanted to plan our year going forward and really launch Crumb Boss into like just huge proportions. And I think it was shortly after that we realized that we both kind of had different ideas of what the future looked like. So I think I'm going to wrap it up here, but I promise it won't take me 2 weeks to get to the next one. Like, in the next couple of days, I will continue with how Crumb Boss evolved and then eventually dissolved. And then my next move with the Woodland Bakery blog and how Jason came along. So yeah, let me just cut it off here, and I'm going to get started on the next one right away because I know 2 weeks in between each one of these episodes is just way too long. And I don't know, it's getting fun now. Like, all of these memories of Crumb Boss, really, you could probably hear it. Like, that was so much fun and just like probably the best time of my life. So yeah, we're going to pick it up with more of that in the next one. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, happy vegan baking. Bye for now.